For the first 5 rounds of Season 5 of the Big C's MX-5 Challenge, it's seen 2 drivers, along with a third, mix their way into the title. 2 different winners have made their way to the top step of the podium. Brandon Hawken from Global SimRacing has had a dominant campaign with 3 victories, including one of the largest victories in series history just a few weeks ago. Compare that to the up-and-coming youngster of Ryan Race Team's Elvis Rankin, well regarded for his experience in the real world on dirt, on the pavement, on the short tracks, as well as on the road courses. He showed that speed throughout this campaign. But also don't forget about the drivers like Yami Damases Torres, who's been able to keep up with the pace inside the top 5 much of the campaign, has been one of our consistent drivers for R70, as he looks to try and break himself into the conversation. But the matter of the fact is, how will things fare for the second half of the campaign? We're about to find out here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Welcome everyone to today's edition of the Sim Experience Countdown to Green, live at the virtual Kent, England-based circuit Brands Hatch for Round 6 of Season 5 of the Big C's MX-5 Challenge. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth tonight is Stefan Schlacker, behind the scenes art director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. This is one of the most pristine racetracks in all of the United Kingdom. Let's take a look at GSRC Track Guide to find out more about Brands Hatch.
Welcome to Brands Hatch. When popular British racing circuits get listed, this track just to the southeast of London often finds itself near the top. The extensive history of the venue has meant that many famous names in racing have ran laps here. But the stats make it sound deceptively simple, with the Grand Prix and Indy course having 9 and 6 turns respectively. Laps might be short, but they're also fast, and the corners are often a challenge to get right. As you'd expect, that means passing is quite difficult, with most drivers leaning towards sending one up the inside at Druids. You might occasionally see overtakes into the first corner, Paddock Hill Bend, but the blind apex and gigantic drop in elevation make that an errand for only the brave. Many of the corner names pay tribute to famous British drivers from the past decades, such as Hill, Surtees, Sterling, and Clark. In fact, the fame extends beyond the drivers, but to the cars as well, with this place seeing everything from Formula 1 to Formula 4, touring cars, GT cars, motorcycles, and even rallycross. It's a gorgeously scenic venue where lush trees envelop the back half of the course, while the front half is mostly encapsulated inside a natural amphitheater. This makes it extremely popular with race fans who can see a majority of the circuit from many seating positions. With a great location near a major metropolitan hub, a spectator-friendly layout, and an experience that challenges drivers, you can see why this place remains abuzz with racing to this day.
That was a look at GSRC lap guide and track guide for Brands Hatch. Remember, the Countdown to Green is brought to you by the Sim Experience AccuForce steering system. The most advanced tuning features on the market. The AccuForce Direct Drive is second only to the real thing. To check out the entire Sim Experience line of products, head on over to simexperience.com. Now let's head to my broadcast partner for tonight, Stefan Schlacker, as these drivers get ready to go racing from England. Expected to be a competitive one. What should drivers and fans expect to see today?
Yeah, it should be a really competitive one, especially because it's only our second non-draft track in 6 rounds that we are gonna see before us here in the Big C's MX-5 Challenge. Obviously, one of the more country-sided or club-sided tracks that we have on the iRacing side. Look out especially for Surtees. That's that second left-hander after the Paddock Hill Bend. Really a lot of understeer in that MX-5 leading onto that backstretch up to the Pilgrim's Drop. Speaking of drops, you can really easily drop your tires into the grass here as well, because there's virtually no tarmac runoff whatsoever. Hawthorne Bend, the really fast uphill right-hander, very easy on the exit to drop your wheels off there, and especially that very quick uphill kink, right-hand uphill kink that is Sheens. It's really easy to overshoot that corner, but it's also really easy to undershoot it. That's where most of the time will be lost or gained on the track here today. So, Justin, these guys will have a really big battle up on their hands, not only against each other, but also against the track.
going to be an interesting, absolutely, especially without the championship as fair. Let's take a look at the point standings entering today, where it's Brendan Hawken in control of the title fight. He has 3 victories on the campaign, including the last race at the Charlotte Roval, 107 total points to his name. Elvis Rankin comes in today second after a rough race, though, at the Roval, was involved in an early incident, but recovered to make points score for the round. Then Torres rounds out the top 3 with 92 points on the campaign. Clifford Eben, Robert Hartley round out your top 5 entering today's action. Now, as these drivers get ready for the second half of the season, let's take a look at your race details as we get ready for round number 6.
Yeah, 10 rounds in total we're gonna see in this season, so still only started a halfway point of this series. 40 minutes as always, these guys will have to face with a setting sun in the back, so we will see as always the lights turn off somewhere around the 20-minute mark in this race. Setups are fixed to the iRacing baseline, so what you get by iRacing is exactly what these guys also drive on. They have a limited fuel to start with. They will have to make a pit stop after 25 minutes, otherwise they're not gonna make it till the end. They also have an incident camp, 20 incident points, and that might be a really interesting talking point, because we just might see a few people, especially at the back of the pack, run into that cap.
Qualifying is underway for these competitors, with Robert Hartley at the top of the board with a 140.5 at the moment. James Sharp, Elvis Rankin, James Saunders, and Yami Damascus Torres currently the top 5. Let's take a look at your qualifying details presented by SH8 Shifter. These drivers have 15 minutes to set 4 solo qualifying laps with strict qualifying scrutiny, meaning if they say slow down too much of the racetrack or try and do tire warm-up methods, it can lead to penalization and disqualification for the qualifying session. These competitors have been doing so for the past 7 or so minutes to try and set the best lap times they can. Once again, your qualifying details presented by SH8 Shifter. SH8 Shifter uses only the best commercial products, the high quality 3D printed shifters you need when you're on the track. Their commitment to detail and durability ensures that you receive the perfect shifter. Find them on the web at shiftersh.com. 34 drivers on the racetrack at the moment for qualifying, and several different competitors have showed flashes of speed this campaign, like Anthony Burrows looking for a bit of luck. But it's also a race round today where we are seeing some drivers who may not have made too many starts in the past, especially in the past few races. The fan favorite, Fernando Signoretto, is in the field today. He's 16th on the board, for example. Barbaza will make a debut for the season, and several others looking to show what they can do pace-wise.
Yeah, and the pace looks really good right now. We have 34 drivers in total that have signed up for this race, and the top 17 are actually inside the 1 second mark of your current leader, Brandon Hawking, with a 40.515. The last one inside that 1 second mark is actually Christian Lindroth, as Brandon Hawking goes faster with a 40.436. So 18 drivers still are inside at 1 second.
Currently, just 2 drivers have not set a time. Barbaza, who has not hit the racetrack, and Arlie Harlow. Everyone else has set a time at least once. Seen moments ago, Justin Hilly among your debut drivers. But the main thing is, though, this type of race and this type of track can bring out different types of winners. Who do you feel this track flows towards? Because we've seen how Brendan Hawken was at Suzuka. How do you feel this one's going to fare out, though, with Brands Hatch?
Yeah, most definitely Brendan Hawking will be one of your top guys, because he has shown that in those flow tracks like Suzuka, like Brands Hatch are, he is very strong. Obviously, also look out for the comeback of Robert Hartley, because he really loves non-draft tracks, and guess what? Brands Hatch is exactly that. There's no draft whatsoever. Really surprising right now, that 3rd place driver, Taha Kukukut, 14.6, only 2/10 away. Really interesting to see him very far up the order. One of the little bit surprises for me right now, negative-wise, Elvis ranking only 8th place. So I would also even put him onto that list, because if I remember right, he won the first race at Okayama.
Yeah, And with strategy, too, to get a 3-second buffer, the rest of the field can only get within about 2 seconds before the checker flag waved in that race. So it could be interesting how this all plays out. We see several drivers currently completing some times, but the main thing is, though, if you're, say, stuck in some of the traffic, what are the best places to pass here, knowing this isn't necessarily, as you said, a drafting track?
Well, it's also not really a track for passing. That's a little bit of an issue, but you can pass into the Paddock Hill Bend, Pilgrim's Rise, Druids. Those are your places. So turn 1, turn 2. Can also do something into Hawthorne Bend. The draft isn't too strong, but it can get you there alongside into that fast right-hander. And then you still have Stallings and the last corner, that is Clearways. So you still have passing opportunities. Best one most definitely Druids. For the others, though, you really have to work.
Taking a look at Torres, he needs to try and go from deeper in the field. He is currently on some extra practice laps, only 10th in qualifying, and you can see partly why, going off to the grass. It's been a struggle for him off and on throughout this session, trying to get things together. He only reached that 40.7 bracket. That was 0.6 off the quickest time in practice.
And also, one guy I just saw that also is a little bit of a surprise. Nico Arvilomi, 6th place right now, 3/10 away. Haven't seen him in a very long time that far up the order.
You know, very impressive driver to say the very least when we see him competitive here. Daniel Munoz, by the way, again on extra practice laps. Just about every single driver has recorded times that are possible. The one driver really taking a look towards outside of here and there may be, well, for the most part, maybe Nick Carty. That's about it. Everyone has set 4 lap times. The only driver's not set a time on the board, well, is not in the paddock. So on that mark, then, what do you feel are going to be the keys to victory today with less than 3 minutes on the clock?
Consistency, your biggest part here. They're not allowed to make a mistake because that grass is really slippery here at Brands Hatch. Also, maybe saving your fuel a little bit because it is a very slow pit lane and it really is a rather hard pit exit because you get dropped right onto the apex of turn 1. You have to be careful where you are, where are the guys around you, and yeah, just overall speed. You need to be able to slide that rear out like the MX-5 loves to and not destroy your tires in the making, because those right-handers and left-handers both are extremely important for the overall speed.
The last driver who could realistically put in a lap time, everyone else on lap 5 or put in a tow on lap 4 was Evan. Everybody else essentially done for the session outside of extra warm-up laps. So essentially your grid is now locked into stone for this one, which means in just a few moments we'll move towards your pitbox.io starting grid. Pitbox.io is a new cloud-based data platform that allows drivers, engineers, and coaches to store, analyze, and share data such as track notes and car setup to better improve performance on the racetrack. Visit pitbox.io to get started. Waiting for the drivers to get the cue to go off towards the starting grid, with everyone essentially putting in extra warm-up laps on the racetrack here. Your quick thoughts once more before we get back rolling.
Well, first lap should also be extremely interesting. We haven't really talked about that. It's a short run up to turn 1, but your real first braking zone will be Druids, and it's a very narrow entry into a very, very narrow exit, and it immediately throws you pretty much into the Graham Hill Bend. So, wouldn't be surprised if we see some chaotic start, especially down the hill. Some people getting caught out by the dip there. So, hopefully it all goes well, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little bit of a pile-up in the back.
Reason, by the way, qualifying hasn't completely ramped up in the clock is Paul Barbanza has rolled his car back to the paddock, but not make it in time to be able to record an official record on the board. With that mark, let's take a look towards how the drivers will start for today's action, where Brandon Hawkins is the best time in qualifying, 140.4, with James Sharp in second. Teammates will look to control the field with Robert Hartley in P3, with Jordan Buckmeyer in P4. It's Kukuku in P5, looking to carry his momentum he's had all season. With Nico Arilomi in P6. It's James Saunders starting in 7th today with Andreas Prieto in P8. He was the quickest driver in practice. Elvis Rankin and Jaume Damascus Torres round up your top 10, Stefan.
Juan Manuel Fernandez continues his slump of a run, only 11th place in qualifying, though only being beaten by 3/1000ths of a second by Jaume Torres. Caleb Heitz in 12th place with Clifford Evans once again outside the top 10, second time in a row, only 13th for him. Ben Hamlet, another bad qualifying for him, 14th place only with Justin Hill in 15th. Atsushi Maeda in 16th, the 56th of Fernando Signoretto in 17th with Christian Lindrod. In 18th, 19th went to Anthony Burrows, and 20th went to George Fike.
Marek starts 21st today with Jason Walsh in 22nd position today in one of the NASA Rocky Mountain cars. Arlo starts in 23rd today for BRT with Liam Hyde in 24th. Lubov starts in 25th position again. The F3 driver will start alongside Summit Paulding on the starting grid. Nick Martin starts 27th with Hayden Gober, Daniel Munoz, and Nick Carty. Your top 30 last 4 drivers. Seeger, Dan Slattery will be making his debut for the season in the Evolve Sim Racers car. It's Alex Prem, and the last driver to not set a time, the 2:12 of Paul Barbaza. Rounds out your 34 competitors. Just waiting for the last of the drivers to make the way to the starting grid. Overall, your quick thoughts here as we get ready to charge our way up to Paddock Hill Bend.
Yeah, I said watch out for especially that Clifford Evans car 13th, and also for Andres Prieto as well as Elvis Ranking from way back there outside and inside, just inside the top 10. These guys will be charging up to the front, hoping for some good racing. If you really want to keep up with everybody, GSRC.tv, your way.
Engines are revving. The lights are on. The green lights are up. We're underway for Brands Hatch. The second half of the Big C's MX-5 Challenge season is underway. And a good launch for Brendan Harkin off into turn 1, holding on to the lead for now. James Sharp's teammate Robert Hartley all single file, bumper to bumper early. Everyone with a clean launch. One driver had to start for the pit lane, Lee Martin. Justin Hill had a technical issue. Rest of the field off and away. Contact as Ollie Lomies kicked off the racetrack.
Yeah, that was somebody braking a little bit too late into Druids. I didn't catch who that was. I think it was a 66, but that could have been wrong. Either way, a little bit of a gap already starting to happen there behind, or the front rather, of Nico Arvilomi.
I've known as well Clifford Evans, who started in 13th position, was spun around. He's now back in 32nd position, still within range though with the lead pack, but off into sector 3, making their way through the Pilgrim's Drop. One of the quickest straight line speed sections of the racetrack as they go through Hawthorne Hill before heading to the Derek Minter Straight off to Westfield. And as you see with Elvis Rankin in the backdrop, easy to overrun the corner and go to the grass. So the top 8 separated by 2 seconds so far as they make their way towards Sterling's now, the sharp left-hander, before heading to Clearways up to the clock curve to round up the first lap of the race.
And the gap continues to build between Jaume Torres and Elvis Ranking. That top, I think, 8 guys are starting to run a little bit away from the rest of the field. Maybe Jaume Torres is still able to hop on that train, but it seems like it does not right now.
Leads the first lap. Dan Slattery, by the way, at the back of the field had trouble. 32nd position, just got back rolling, dropped to dead last on the circuit. In this kind of race, we talked about the importance of strategy in some of these races and some of the patience. How patient do you feel you have to be if you don't get a major shot to make a pass, especially since, as you can see, some other drivers may decide to go sliding to the grass to fight back and forth like Saunders and Kukuku are trying to do.
Yeah, you have to be extremely patient, obviously, because, Saunders super wide outside of 30s there, loses immediately 3 positions, now also to the 01 of Ranking. They're actually touching North thrice even down the backstretch here, Pilgrim's Drop. And yeah, it is just like that. You have to be extremely patient, especially in club cars. And if you really can't find a way past, just save that little bit of fuel because that will help you on the pit stop.
Your top three is all breaking away because of all that craziness we're just referring to. That is around where Kukukut is now about 2 seconds behind your race leader. In the battle for P5, Bachmeier has broken away from that craziness. The downside is for Elvis Rankin, his championship hope, Stefan, is he needs to try and get by some of these cars in that train.
Yeah, pretty much has to make his way up to the front, guys, or he will have a little bit of problems getting back to Brandon Hawking throughout this season in the championship standings. Speaking about standings, Atsushi Maeda was, by the way, the guy who did spun around the 66 of Cliffland in turn 1 as they just received a black flag for that contact.
Bailey coming in to serve that black flag for avoidable contact as Elvis Rankin inside of Druids. This is where exactly he was traded last time by, but Rankin electing to go for the switchback. Can he get it with Prito nearly off to the grass? No. Thought about it though. And that's one of the main things, right? If you think to the takeover of Berkshire Esports Super Cup race here just a few months ago, Stefan, that was the craziest section of the racetrack where there were several incidents with drivers wanting to make the dive into Druids, and then by the time they got to Graham Hill Bend, you either had someone let them go or you had massive contact.
Yeah, that's just the nature of this old school track. Yes, you can do something into Druids, but if you don't execute it perfectly, the other guy will have a comeback into the Graham Hill Bend because it is a left-hander a right-hander that is being followed by a left-hander. So if that guy on the outside somehow is able to hold that outside line, he is going to have the inside for the next one. And it just continues on this track. You have a passing opportunity right where afterwards you have a switchback opportunity as Elvis Rankin looks to the inside, gets chopped off though.
Prado being really defensive right now. Worked his way to rear world spec Miata racing this year, in fact. He's had a lot of racing experience in go-karts and various different levels of racing across his local countries. Still, though, it shouldn't be surprised that Brandon Hawkin is now in the lead by 1.2 seconds, is starting to pull away for the rest of the pack. There is a bit of tension, though, should note, with some of the cars across the field. Just about a lap ago, Ben Hamwood and Nico Arvilomi were having an argument on the radio. Another car stopped to the side of the racetrack. That's Lobov with a bit of trouble, and the 46 who stopped on the side of the track.
And it seems like that car has been stopped there for quite some time because Lyubov was one of the last cars in the pack here and she just got lapped. So very interesting whatever happened there.
Yep.
And yeah, it is. I just want to make my point a little bit clearer that I wanted to make earlier. It is just this old school track where you always have a passing opportunity followed by a repassing opportunity. And that is exactly what can get people very frustrated when you pass someone, but they right have the opportunity to get past you.
Exactly. Currently, Sharp reeling back in Hawkin a little bit this sector by about 0.3. Hartley still keeping within range. Bachmeier still holding on to 4th. Saunders is up 2 positions to 5th. Kukut shuffle back to 6th. Brito, Rankin, Torres, Hamlin, Arilowi, and Hyde all within about 0.6 of one apiece. That stretches all the way to 5.6 seconds back. We're not even 7 minutes into the clock, so a decent spread amongst our competitors.
And James Sharp there in second place with his teammate of Brandon Hawking just ahead of him, playing pretty much the Kevin Costner right now of this race, being the bodyguard of his teammate, just elbows out, trying to keep everybody in behind, and maybe slow them down a little bit, just because he can't keep the pace of Brandon Hawking, and thus also keeps Robert Hartley behind him.
Early pit stop, by the way, for Juan Manuel Fernandez, taking left side tires very, very early for the number 4 car. He was in the mid-pack. He talked about his struggles. He's had a pit stop of more than 20 seconds just about already in the stall, as you see on the clock. So an interesting situation now, as he has been there for a lengthy amount of time with some potential troubles in this one. That's all going on still. Sharp is starting to get back into a rhythm. 3/10 lost by Hawkin last time by. And keep in mind, talked about the momentum in this series. Hawkins had a lot of momentum on the surface as well. He's been competing against real-world racers as well in various different stock car series, where he actually has torched several real-world competitors by upwards of 20 seconds in 2 different races already on that side. So there's a lot of positive momentum in the way of Brandon Hawkin. That momentum, though, is starting to slip in this race. He's down to just 4/10 the gap.
Yeah, not surprised that Brandon Hawking is able to scorch some people because he is mighty fast. It's the reason why he is on that Mivano team. They are a really great team, and Hawking fits in there perfectly. And yeah, seems like Sharp actually able to pick up some speed right now, as he has closed that gap right up with his teammate, and should be really interesting if James is maybe thinking about doing something here and not just play the side roll.
You'd have to think this is something they potentially talked about too. You mentioned the fuel save. Hawkins not going to be able to quite save too much fuel, right, if he's running away from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, of course, but you also have to say that you can't save too much fuel when you're driving behind someone at a track like Brands Hatch. There's not a lot of full throttle you're doing. There's not a lot of off throttle you can have in the draft. But in an MX-5, the flow rate is rather slow, so you can save fuel, and obviously every little bit of fuel you save is time saved during that pit stop.
Taking a look on board right now with James Sharp, and you can see how they're taking the curves. The difference is Hawkins trying to avoid using the left side curbing, it seems, while Sharp, he's been hitting that curbing. Just about gave a bump trap to the back end of his Global SimRacing teammate. Hartley's also the back end, and here comes the move. Hawkin allows him to the inside line. Sharp, though, not able to get a quick enough pull, though, to send it up the inside.
Might have even lifted there ever so slightly James Sharp, but most definitely he is looking extremely sharp behind that wheel of the MX-5. Wouldn't be surprised if they are thinking about switching these two, because Brandon Hawking, he has the gap in behind championship-wise, so could just let James run away.
By the way, Fernandez is back on the racetrack after 53 seconds of the pit lane, scoring in 31st position. That's in reference to what we've seen before. He's 1 minute and 21 seconds behind the rest of the field at the moment. It stopped delta of more than 1 minute and 9 seconds. Seems like the time's starting to stretch on forward for the top 3 away from Bachmeier, Saunders, and Kukukut, who are still running the 140.9s. The drivers up towards the front, though, have fallen off a touch whenever they've had the check-up effects now with Hawkin to the 141.5s in some cases. One car off the track. Bachmeier missed the corner apex, slid off into the grass, and checked up the whole grouping for about 4th on back.
Yeah, very lucky for the 15 there not to actually spin out or something, as he did miss that turn by quite a bit. Actually, just way too much speed there for Jordan Bachmeier through Westfield Bend, so he was extremely lucky not to spin out on the grass on the outside.
Absolutely. Once again, getting back to the rhythm of those cars. But the interesting marks, as we talked about, for some drivers, this would be not an easy race. For Torres, he's lost a spot. For the fan favorite, though, in the 56, he's just had an issue. Had been up to 15th, but the sub-racing car has now been shuffled all the way back to 24th position after getting hit from behind by Adam Marek. That checked up the field, and now fan favorite off the circuit, George Fike, also in the pit lane this time by, so the window is starting to open up for these cars.
Yeah, George, always one of the first guys to pit, so not surprised that he is already pitting this early into the race. Remember, they are not on a restricted fuel tank, they just have not that much fuel in the tank. They still can't fill up above that 25-minute mark.
You can see James Sharp going to bump draft Brandon Hawkin now. A couple drivers have already talked to the radio, Stefan, about that, and we mentioned in the past in the drafting tracks again, help you save the gas there. Some of that philosophy coming into play here, it seems, for a couple competitors, down specifically at the Pilgrim's Drop.
Yeah, obviously, you just can get off the throttle there a little bit. Let off as James Saunders lets off the tarmac there a little bit, goes a little bit countryside sightseeing through Kent, but comes back right onto a track before Sterling's bent, so no harm and no foul for him, just a little bit of time lost to the back of John Backemeyer, who is also starting to reel in Robert Hartley. So a little bit of a, I don't want to say draft track is forming, but obviously I'm gonna come back to it once again. Every single milliliter of fuel you can save on the track is something you don't have to fuel up in the pit stop.
By the way, technical issue for the 77 machine, who was that car who made contact with the 56 a couple laps ago. Eventually, though, somebody's going to have to try something different, though, you have to think, again, because we've seen how powerful the undercut here is. Do you think we see something like we've seen with Okayama again with Elvis Rankin with this type of
Saunders!
race? And Saunders,
Wow.
yes, with Bachmeyer able to make the pass, yes.
Holy moly, what a pass by Saunders, just completely slides his way and chops the nose off the 50 now, so gets a bump drop from the one behind. But yeah, as you said, the undercut can be extremely powerful here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some people try for that, especially at a track like this. If you're being held up, oh, that's a little bit of contact there. Kukukut goes wide, the number one, kinda saves it on the grass, the 15. 2 by 2 now.
Oh, and this is going to get ugly as Elvis Rankin's off. What a checkup as Ben Hamlet keeps off the cars. 2 by 2 through sector 3 as the sorry buttons fly up. Somebody's going to have to let off somebody here in all of this. Bachmeyer on the inside of Kukuku. They've lost 2 seconds in this. It's to the point where Robert Hartley has pulled off the racetrack. The undercut window is open as now the radio is getting very active with all this battling.
Yeah, and I hope Robert Hartley didn't overshoot his pit entry there, because it looked kind of strange how fast he was going into that cone. But it seems like he was able to avoid any penalty right now as the left side tires go up to be changed.
And this is still looking ugly in all of this. Make it now 2.5 seconds lost now to James Saunders rather. Rankin still continuing to get held up in this. Ben Hamlet trying to get to the inside this time into Surtees once more. Still once again, Prix still trying to defend several different lines. Big send up the inside again by Hamlet as Kukuku gets hit along the rumble strips just about. Somebody needs to back off here for a moment because again, the leaders are running away from this.
Yeah, the Hornet Swarm has been, or the Hornet's Nest has been stabbed with a stick, and they have most definitely reacted to that aggression and have upped their own aggression. By the way, Robert Hartley, he is in clean air, so this should be really interesting for the number 22. He has about 2 seconds up ahead. He has about 5 seconds in behind. There we can see him on the screen. So it should be really interesting to see how Robert Hartley can perform in clean air without anybody ahead or behind him.
By the way, Clifford Eben has put his car in the tow truck with some issues as well. We have an update with Lubov has had an issue with the steering wheel. That's why she was stopped on the side of the racetrack for a good lap or so. It couldn't get on the tow truck. Elvis Rankin, Nico Arilomi are now in the pit lane as they have gone for the undercut with all the battling after losing 2.5 seconds. Your race leaders continue to charge along.
And bad news for Robert Hartley. He has already caught the guys up ahead for 22nd position as Jonas Seger actually crashes in the car in front of him there through that last turn curve. Let's see, Robert Hartley coming over the start-finish line right now, and he's well past Elvis Rankin.
And that was to be expected since he was at least 10 car lengths ahead, and that was just as things were getting heated and all of that. You see the pit deltas as well for Arilomi and Hartley. A full 0.6 of a second or so off the pit lane gained by Hartley compared to how Ari Lomi approached his pit entry.
Oh, and Robert Hartley just had a little bit of a contact with Paul Babusa. Both go off track.
Yeah, he tried to send up the inside of the older tire car, but looks like no damage on the right side of the race car. Could have been much, much worse. Just a little scrape. This is again currently 32 seconds behind your race leaders. Again, the delta for these competitors so far has been about 33 seconds at the cap. Speaking of your race leaders, Hawken still in the race lead. 13 estimated laps to go this time by. Will they come down to the lane? Yes, Brandon Hawken and James Sharp trying to come across the pass with Robert Hartley in position to potentially cycle to the lead.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that I wouldn't be surprised if they have to react to the threat of Robert Hartley as there's another car into the pit lane. That's Charles Torres in the background now coming into your shot. So this is gonna be really interesting. As I said, 33 seconds is the pit lane delta. Where is Robert Hartley?
Robert Hartley is in sector 3. You can see him right here going underneath the bridges. This is right now working his way now through Clark Curve. As you can see, Hawken and Sharp right on sync with the strategy. Off in a wait and fairly close in the marking. Just about a second or so separation to the point where the cars are fighting near side by side in some of these groupings with some of the traffic. So Hawken got close. If there was another extra lap, though, by the Bavado cars, he likely cycles the race lead. The top part is, though, your current race leaders, or rather net race leaders, are being held up by all this traffic to allow Hartley back in even more, as well as Rankin, who was able to undercut all the air cars he was scrapping with before. Stefan.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a decider here right now. Hayden Gober and Fernando Signoretto, how are they going to behave against your clean pit stop cleaned leaders? So really interesting to see how the 90 and 56, if they're going to make it easy or if they're going to fight for their positions. Right now you can already see James Sharp dropping away from Brandon Hawken because he is still stuck behind that 90.
In mind that Andreas Prito and Kuku both came down this time. Your overall leader for now, and James Saunders does not pit. There's the dive underneath the sub car. That is Brandon Hawken able to gain one more position and try and get a bit more space. Now the top part's going to be all the other cars are still getting held up right behind Gober, and they get crashed. Second on that net position crashing. James Sharp and several others spinning. That included Robert Hartley. And off and away to the pit lane goes the 90. Let's take a look at the GSRC replay as this may have just gave Brandon Hawken a big cushion.
Yeah, the 90 of Hayden Gober, he wanted to pit in there. He actually did come twice onto the text chat, at least, saying that he is going to pit in that lap, and it seems like that Sharp just didn't see that.
And a lot of time lost for Hartley. Does gain a spot, yes, with Sharp spinning around, but the problem is it's about 4 seconds. So in other words, this puts Brandon Hawken in the driver's seat just past halfway for this race, depending on how things flow. The main thing is, though, the drivers behind, if they work together, might be able to try something. Elvis Rankin trying to lead an effort to get back to this car.
Yeah, all eyes on James Saunders. He is staying out. He's still out. Let's see if he's going to come in this lap. No, he's still staying out. So this is really good for Saunders. He's going to have that extremely fresh left side rubber with him behind him. That is also, by the way, Cliff Redden that we have lost in lap 1 very early. So James Saunders, keep your eyes peeled on him on the live timing and scoring, because he is going to be a threat for at least that second place, if not even the first one.
Dale Pines also just came in this time by, as well as Anthony Burrows, NASCAR iRacing Pro Series competitors this year for Nexus Esports. They passed by quickly, though, by all the drivers in this grouping. Do you think, though, that these drivers can work together to get back to Brandon Hawken. Is there going to be enough time? There's still 10 estimated laps to go this upcoming time by.
Well, Brandon Hawking is one of the toughest competitors to reel in again. We have seen that at Suzuka, where he just completely did fly off. Even though we were at a draft track, he was so far ahead, he was able to take 4 tires instead of 2. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible for them, but they really have to work together and somehow find a little bit of more speed, because they are currently lacking that a tiny bit to be faster than Brandon Hawking.
Long draft this time with the back of the ranking from Kukuku as well. They have Prix in this drafting train along with Hartley. The main thing as well I'm keeping my eye on is the drivers really trying to stretch it. Saunders, Bachmeier, Hamlet, and Christian Lindroth. The drivers currently in front of your race leader who still have to pit. They are expected most of them this time. Saunders came in with lap traffic, but Ben Hamlet and Jordan Bachmeier have been able to stretch it 1 additional lap on the gas. Do you think they can cut out enough time in the pit lane by having to take less fuel to be able to even jump towards this pack?
Sure, it's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, but you never know how Jordan Bachmeier and Ben Hamlet are doing their strategy. Maybe they're just continuing to save fuel even on a second stint, and thus are able to take even less fuel on board. So it should be really interesting, but they are most definitely going to come into pit lane this time around.
It might work actually, Stefan, because 2 seconds less of fuel for Saunders just jumped in front of this whole pack. Ben Hamlet might have a shot here, and this is not going to help, as now they're fighting behind Kukuku. Rankin and Prix are now scrapping again, as Kukuku cycled in front of Rankin. Prix toward the side end of Rankin as they try to shuffle the cars around. So they now have 5 cars, 3 seconds behind the back end of Brandon Hawken. Bachmeier, Hamlet, and Lindroth all expected to come in this time with 15 minutes on the clock. They are gaining about a 10th or so a lap down the straightaways. It's just the cornering that's been key, as Bachmeier is currently your race leader. That's Ben Hamlet, who is gaining a lot of time, who is at the edge of the fuel tank. They've been able to stretch it 15 laps. There they go. The question is, can they do something like James Saunders just tried to do a few moments ago? Keep in mind, these drivers were in that big-time fighting group a few laps ago. Ben Hamlin overran his pit box. That's going to lose him some time, as here comes the whole pack, and Brandon Hawken leading the charge, Stefan, as he's ready to cycle his way up to the point.
Yeah, he's not going to come completely to the point, because Christian Lindroth actually able to do another lap. So the 21 stayed out one more time, so he is now the net leader. Brandon Hawken cycles past, and there also goes the pack pass, and look at that, John Bachmeier nowhere near them.
How in the world has Christian Lindroth been able to stretch it on the gas this long? This is the longest we've seen on the clock for the gas for him. That grouping of drivers trying to work together, though, they are no longer working together. They're losing time now. All of them are now fighting for what could be the second step of the podium and the third step as well. Saunders currently in that second step position, but Hartley, Kukuku now make it 3 wide, with Rankin shuffling his way to the bottom of the racetrack. This continues to lose them ground more and more as the laps now turn. 8 estimated laps to go this upcoming time by. Into the grass goes Andreas Prix. He's able to stick it.
I think Robert Hartley didn't know that he is going to have Prieto right by himself. Oh, that's a touch there between Kukuku and Elvis Rankin. Rankin goes wide. Will he lose his car, or does he keep it under control? He keeps it under control. Good job.
They've lost about a second and a half this lap, as Kukuku wants a chance to try and fight for P4. It's currently in position for the racetrack, net P3. If they continue to cycle the way it's looking. Lindroth has made his way to the pit lane this time by. He's about 16 seconds ahead of Hawken, 20 seconds ahead of this grouping. Will likely not cycle in front of any of these cars. In fact, may cycle to around the edge of the top 10. So in other words, this is now the fight for the podium. It's still, for Brandon Hawken, a 3.4 second lead over James Saunders. That is about 5 seconds ahead or so from this group of cars. 8 to go.
Oh, Elvis ranking once again off track there outside of the paddock hill bend. Now he's side by side with the 23. Gives a little bit of a shove there. Andres Prieto right on the apex to get himself passed into P4.
They've been really physical, to say the very least, in that grouping. Eventually, though, you have to think the frustration could settle on in. Keep in mind, Bachmeier and Hamlet cycle behind by about 5-10 car lengths or so. They're right into this pack as well because of all this fighting. Torres, at this rate, is the fastest car on the racetrack in the 141.3s in clean air, and he might get a chance to get in a podium after struggling all race.
Yeah, this is the break that Shammas Torres might have needed here. Have to see if he's able to get up to this pack and then actually move through it, because that's another question. Being able to move through the pack, but the guy that loves to see them battle behind him, that is Brandon Hawking, moving further and further away from these guys, nearly 4 seconds already away, and this is really good for his championship hopes.
At this point, if they can't get up to Hawking, what does this mean for the rest of the championship scrap? Because this would be a massive, massive advantage for Hawking in the points, with several of his championship competitors currently in the mix, yes, for this podium still, but who have been cycled back and forth several times over already in the shuffling to the standings.
Yeah, obviously of the top 5 people, he is pretty much the only one that has been able to put in consistent top 5, top 3 even showing. So it must be a little bit demoralizing for the people around him to know that there's just nothing they really can do to stop him from getting points.
Good that time, clip it by the grass. Coming up to 6 estimated laps to go this upcoming time by 10 minutes on the clock. And the lead is continuing to extend as Saunders and Kukukut had broken away for a little bit, but they've been reeled in quickly by Prieto, Rankin, Hartley, Bachmeier, and Hamlet. Torres is currently about 2.6 seconds or so behind this grouping, give or take. At the moment, he's that car you seen at the very edge of the screen just a moment ago. What a race, though, for Kukukut. He has really improved, because remember back in the last Big C's MX-5 Challenge season, he had some decent runs, but also a lot of incidents, to be quite frank. He's turned things around in a good way this season.
Yeah, most definitely. It's the second time we see him actually try to fight for a second place. Road America was the last time he was able to fight for a position like that until he had a mishap in the pit lane. Oh, that's a chop off very hard by James Saunders. Nearly didn't make it work because he was super late on that move over Kukukut's mess.
Eventually, though, the give and take may start to pull and back away. There's a bump now. Saunders bobbles now. He tries to block to the right side of the racetrack. Rachel now tries to break as he hits Kukukut. Somebody's going to have to be concerned about the incident at this point. Keep in mind, there is a 20-point incident limit, remember, for this series. Several of these competitors might get to that range where they might get into potential risk of that because of all this contact in this group all race.
Yeah, all they can hope for is that the contacts are just 0x's and not heavy enough for 4x's, but we know that sometimes you can trigger 4x even with light contacts. So you really have to be careful, especially with also the off tracks that you can very easily accumulate around this track. So wouldn't be surprised if, as you said, they're getting close to that incident cap.
Saunders still defending very hard on the bottom side of the racetrack, this time to the Westfield off the Dingle Bell. Kukukut nearly slides off the Dingle Bell as he slides the Sheen curve. Still trying to get to the outside line. If he can make it stick, he might try and get the Sterlings. No, Saunders sends it hard. Still hard for P2. Saunders does not want to give this up. There's gonna eventually, though, at the same time here, Stefan, to this rate, be a bit of give and take because it might fall off because of that. Contact as it's Hartley involved. Then Hamlet The car turning him around.
And Robert Hartley has disappeared. He has not resurfaced again. He might just have hit that incident limit.
Take a look right there. And a rough break for Robert Hartley. Top 5 rather in the points. He's not going to be happy to say the very least. After this one, under 5 estimated laps to go, coming up to 4 this time. Now it's the matter of who else is now in that boat. We've already seen Hartley in that situation. We've seen a lot of contact with Saunders, Cuckoo, Prito, Rankin, Bachmeier, and Hamilton on this whole entire train. Torres is also now under 2 seconds behind this grouping of cars, bringing Hyde and Lindroth with them.
And that was just a really bad 30s for Cuckoo. It's extremely easy to mishandle that left-hander. And if you're offline, it's actually a boatload of understeer that you're gonna have in that MX-5. It's really been interesting driving around this track and before this broadcast, because a few times I have managed to overdrive that turn a little bit too late on the braking point, and you just shoot off like there's no tomorrow.
Continuing to have a nice clean run. Keep in mind that track temps again cool as per usual. Lights not on the race cars quite yet, approaching 5 minutes on the clock. Still though, Saunders seems to still struggle a little bit. Again, people talk about the need for some of the clean air in some of the cars. It seems again that draft down some of the straights is a bit beneficial, to the point where it's difficult to break away unless you're Brandon Hawken and really nail down your corners. The problem is, this whole battle for second has not nailed down their corners this entire race, Stefan. You see right there, Saunders hit the curbing again in Paddock Hill Bend, slid off to the grass. Hamlet now into the sand, battling side by side with Bachmeier in the back of the group.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about at the start of this broadcast. You have to be consistent to be fast here. And these guys are neither fast nor consistent. You can really see that the gap has already opened to well over 5.5 seconds up to Brandon Hawken.
And the graphic designer, Penny Hamlet, to say the very least, has been visibly frustrated with some of the moves he's made today. Up to P6, a +8. Your biggest mover, by the way, is Danny Munoz, +11. Rather, is Paul Barbosa, +13. Was among those competitors that had a bit of contact with Hartley earlier in this race after his scheduled pit stop. 3 estimated laps to go this time. Cuckoo back on the rear end. This time checks up, trying to keep it off the back end of Saunders after all of the physical contact for this battle for second. Saunders just really losing those rear tires. The back grip just disappearing on his car as he goes defensive.
Yeah, it seems like that he really used up those rear tires throughout this race. Barely has any grip remaining, and now here comes Cuckoo to the outside.
They make that line work. Hugging the bottom side down the bottom straight to the Paddock Hill Bend. Cuckoo gonna try it? No. Can he get the switchback? No. Nearly hits Saunders again. They touch. Off into the sand again goes Saunders. He avoids the wall. Gets into the braking zone and still holds on to it. How in the world?
How in the world, indeed. That was quite some rallycross style driving there from James Saunders to keep that MX-5 under him and somehow even stays in second place.
Elvis Rankin now off into the grass as well in the backdrop. Ben Hamlet was able to pass on by as a result. Rankin now being shuffled to as far back as 6th because of that battling with Bachmeier at the back of the grouping. And Torres is just about there. He's within drafting range, coming up to 2 estimated laps to go. If things continue to intensify here, Torres may be able to claw away a couple positions depending on how things fare for the battle for second. Cuckoo looking for one of his best finishes in his entire career in this series. Saunders looking for the podium, has been very defensive this entire race. Let's get back to Sterling's. This is where Cuckoo was able to build up the run last time by. This time, though, better braking for Saunders. Looking like Cuckoo might be trying to reset things here. get a bit of space, Stefan, make the move, possibly?
Yeah, he has been showing quite some anticipation into Paddock Hill Bend, but he really hasn't had the execution yet. So really gonna be intriguing how Kukut is gonna take this last lap. I don't think he's gonna try anything in this lap right now that we're in the second last lap of this race. So Kukut, he still has to be careful because right behind him, that's Andres Prieto and the whole Wolf Pack as well.
Rachel's also been fairly aggressive here, +4 for him. Hamlin as well on the back end has really been wanting to make a lot of moves, but hasn't had some of the space to do so today. Of note, George Fike was not able to make it on his stint. He has had to come down for a second pit stop. He was the only driver who was trying to stretch it 15 laps remaining on the racetrack. Everybody else expect to be good on the fuel. Kukut has the least amount of fuel of note, though, inside the top 10, a 14.7 second pit stop, remember, when he came down about 20 minutes ago. About 1 minute and 10 seconds now on the clock, expecting the white flag this time by Hawkins. Still leads by more than 6 seconds as Kukut misses the corner apex.
Yeah, just ever so slightly took a little bit too much speed into the turn, had to way over slow that car because there was a yellow and black James Saunders just ahead of him as Brendan Hawkins comes into Cloud Curve for the second last time.
Back up towards clearways once more. White flag this time by. Final lap once more from Brands Hatch. The last time this series we hear, it was a Movado Sim Racing machine who took the checker flag. And Movado Sim Racing 1, 2, 3 for Brandon Hawkins. He finished third that day. And now, it's just a couple miles away from victory once more this season, the Big C's MX-5 Challenge. But P2 is still very much up for grabs. Saunders and Kukut have been scrapping for about 5 laps or so now. They're feeling pressure, though, from Prix and Hamlet over the back end of both of them. Once more off, out of the Grand Hill Bend, off to the Cooper Straight. No look for Kukut yet, may have one shot if he wants to make the pass. Went for the later break, though. This time, he might try something off to Pilgrim's Drop.
Either that or into Sterling's. These are his last 2 overtaking spots for that second place. Or maybe he's just even content with that third place. Let's have a look.
I mean, with how many blocks have come up from Saunders, you'd have to think some of that could factor in. There's a peak. Not able to get to the right side. Off through Westfield. Both of them slide off towards the end of the rumble strips. Now Prito tries to take a peek. He goes off to the grass. Gets squeezed off as they go to Sheen Curb. Off to the curving hard goes Kukut. To Sterling's defensive line now for Saunders. The switchback now attempted. Kukut nearly runs over the back end of Saunders. Checker flag waves for Hawkins. They're side by side for second. Brandon Hawkins once more will take the checker flag of the Big C's MX-5 Challenge. It's his 4th win of the season. Oh, well, the battle for second sees Kukut kicked off the racetrack as Prito looks to strip away second and does. Ben Hamlet takes away the podium. Saunders shuffled to 4th. What a final lap, and the frustration boiling over for some of the competitors and happiness for Brandon Hawkins. Simon Paulding will get the last points paying position for today. That is a few positions away from Signorella et al., who finishes in 16th after having trouble, remember, in some of the sequences before, right in front of Munoz, your biggest overall mover, second biggest, I should say, of the day. Your biggest overall was Paul Barboza, who finishes in 21st. Oh, 7 seconds behind the next position. Lot to talk about in post-race coverage, to say the very least. Now it's Brandon Hawkins, the Canadian, who wins once more, his 4th win of the season. Post-race coverage coming up after this. Back to the virtual Brands Hatch for the minus 273 post-race show. Whether it's on the rail track and virtual track, minus 273 has one goal in mind: produce the best racing gloves to get the job done. With unmatched comfort, durability, and style, their gloves will lead your old ones in the dust. Find out how they can help you by visiting minus273.biz. What a fireworks-filled affair, to say the very least, towards the finish of this one. Brandon Hawkin had the calmest race of them all, winning by more than 6 seconds. Second on back, though, well, the paddock's going to be very, very active after this one. Andreas Prito, after contact for the battle for second in the final corner, sees him charge up to his best finish of the season, with Ben Hamlin ripping away the third spot on the podium. James Saunders, after holding on to second for so long, so aggressively, trying to hug every single line possible, finishes in fourth, with Bachmeier and Kukuku rounding out your top 6. Tempers did flare of note for the fourth and sixth place cars rather on the track. Elvis Rankin loses some ground in the championship standings along with Torres, though, in 7th and 8th. That's going to be huge, with Hines and Lindroth coming away with the top 10 and all the craziness.
Yeah, and one of the two biggest losers in this race, Nico Arvelomi, started in 6th race, had a very good first run, but pretty much stayed out too long, and thus only finishes in 11th place, with James Sharp extremely unlucky with a car ahead of him of Hayden Gober. Pitting, he didn't realize it and just completely clattered that car, spun around, and thus only finishes in 12th, starting from 2nd. Anthony Burrows finishes in 13th, with Ari Harrer from 23rd to 14th, gains 9 positions to finish right there in the points, and the last point went to the 111 of Simon Eppelding from 26th, no less. Fernando Signoretto in 16th, with Daniel Ariel Munoz in 17th. Liam Heitz finishes out in 18th place, with George Feig having to make an extra pit stop to only finish in 19th place, and Hayden Gober from 28th to 20th, the last car inside of 1 minute.
Paul Barboza was the biggest mover of the race from 34th to 21st, with Jonas Seeger quietly making his way to 22nd position by the end of the race. Sushi Manadia finishing in 23rd, Fernandez 24th after having a very early pit stop. Evan, Prem, Martin, Hartley, Slattery, and Carty were your top 30. Walsh, Marek, Lubov after a technical issue, and up your finishing drivers who started off today's action. Justin Hill had technical issues after qualifying in this one. In the end, though, it is Brandon Hawkin who once more takes the checker flag. What has been an eventful season, to say the very least, for him so far. He's going to be very pumped up, to say the very least, in these discussions to see how he's faring after this one. Brandon, very calm race compared to the battle for second on back. How are you feeling?
Oh, hey, Justin. Yeah, man, that was that was a big sigh of relief, but also a big disappointment there when that incident happened behind. But man, that was just a really fun race, especially in the first part. A lot of really good racing, and yeah, just unfortunate what happened there. But like I'll take it, So yeah, it was just a great race for everybody. Just pretty happy right now. I'm feeling good.
By the way, there were several dozen, not just one incident, by the
Oh,
way. Yeah, there was a ton. There was a ton. Let's put it that way. What is it, though, about the flow of the non draft tracks that allows you to just run away? Because you've done it at a Cup car, you've done it in Xfinity cars for the stock car side, you've done it in MX-5s, you've done it in just about everything. What is it about you in these types of tracks?
thanks. Yeah, I think like it comes down to a few things. I think I got a new set of pedals before the end of last season, and I feel like those have really helped my consistency a lot. And like I've taught myself to kind of just stay in this mindset of just just do the same thing every single lap and just don't overdrive it. I had a slight bit of an issue with that before, where I'd brake a little bit late or whatever the odd time, and I feel like I've improved on myself a little bit that way. And yeah, and I also really like how the MX-5s have driven since the new update came out a couple months ago, I think it was. And yeah, I think just putting in the laps and getting a lot of practice in, I think that's helped a lot.
Next race, Daytona Road Course. Your thoughts there? Here he is, the
No,
2007 version.
yeah, it's gonna be nuts, I think. Yeah, we've had a race here before, and it's gonna be nuts. I think the draft is insane, and it's gonna be pretty much like NASCAR racing out there. So it's gonna be really entertaining, I think.
Anyone who want to thank once more for yet another victory for you and Movado Sim Racing?
Well, I'd just like to thank everybody at Movado Sim Racing. James did a really good job tonight. It was unfortunate what happened there, but he was on it tonight, and all of my fellow competitors. It was really great running there, and you guys in the broadcast booth, you do a great job every week, and Clifford and all the series sponsors for putting on this thing. It's a great thing to do every weekend.
Congratulations once more on the victory to start the second half of the campaign.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Brendan Hawken, your race winner today, the Canadian, by more than 6 seconds. Stefan Schlackers with someone I think is going to be very pumped up, though. Andreas Prieto charged up at the closing stages to finish on the second step of the podium, his best finish of the year.
Yeah, most definitely his best finish of the year, Andres Prieto. Didn't look like you're gonna be able to match to get somehow onto that podium, but most definitely you probably have to thank your lucky stars a little bit there to finish in second place. What was that last lap from your perspective?
Oh, the last lap was a bit crazy. I've raced with those two guys in the past. I know that James is very aggressive. Kutukuri, it's on the clean side, but I know he was gonna send it anyway. So I was behind James all race, and I was expecting an incident whenever the last lap was coming. So I kind of that's why I kind of keep myself cool the 10 laps before that. But yeah, it was a fun lap.
Yeah, most definitely. Not only a fun lap, but also a fun race because you were pretty much in the midst of all the fighting throughout the race. How were you able to keep your car clean to get there in the end?
It was difficult, as I told you. Racing some of those guys in the past, I rather kept myself away from the big battles because I know that that's gonna end up me being off track or with a big incident. So I try to keep my head down and let the contacts develop themselves. And in the end, it's sometimes you get lucky, like I did, and sometimes you just hang out behind. So this time I was lucky.
Yeah, this time around you were able to keep yourself away from incidents and other cars, but looking ahead to next week, that might not be that big of an option, especially at Daytona. What are your thoughts going into the big roval?
That's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna be all about qualifying. Like today, my qualifying was pretty bad. I was like 2 or 3 tenths off my optimum pace. So if you're able to get yourself in that top five, that's gonna likely run away or work together instead of attacking every time. Then you should be good. Once you get into qualifying 6, 7, or further down, that's when you start running into trouble because you start getting into battles and that drops you back, and then the top group runs away from you.
Yeah, most definitely should be a very interesting race next time out. Now, Andres, before we let you go, anybody you want to thank?
Yeah, of course, my family in Colombia and my sponsors, La Monomarca and many others. So thank you for the broadcast and great job you do, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, great job also for Andres Prieto, finishing in second place from an eighth place, just inside the top 10. Congrats once again, Andres, and I think that's everybody that wants to talk to us today, Justin.
Yes, an entertaining race to say the very least. That was the craziest battle for second we've seen in a long while. We've seen crazy battles for the win, not for second, like we've seen there, to the point where they lost about 4 seconds or so, combined with all the scrapping. That includes the first stint, mind you, before the pit stops. And then they lost even more time overall from what they lost in the initial window.
Yeah, most definitely, and it was an interesting dynamic. I mean, that is just Brands Hatch in a nutshell. It always creates an interesting dynamic throughout the race, and it most definitely did live up to its name, but I don't think it's going to be anything compared to what we're going to see at Daytona next week around.
It's going to be an interesting one to say the very least, as Daytona is always an entertaining one, but also one draft can be king. The question is, which driver will come up on top? Wait and see next week. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to tonight's exciting race. Meanwhile, from Brands Hatch, it's Grand Prix Leon here today from England. We'd also like to thank Clifford Evan and Big C's for organizing this strong series, as well as the sponsors, Sim Experience, SHH Shifter, 273, and Hitbox.io. Also like to give additional thanks to provide the software to the companies that provide the software and hardware for broadcasts listed up on screen. Additional thanks to Jude Law, provides our wonderful music screen, how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks as well to the team today, Stefan and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. To support the channel, you can check the merchandise for sale at gsrc.storyvy.com, or check our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell. Now, it's a moment, the Global SimRacing Channel. As just talked about, it's the Daytona Road Course coming up, and it's the bumpy one. Yes, the 2007 version of the Daytona International Speedway and its road course will send the drivers not only full throttle around the Daytona's NASCAR Oval, but as well having to make sure they deal with the bumps, make sure they don't bottom out, and make sure they carry as much speed as they can to the checker flag. Be sure to tune in. We also have upcoming races for other series listed up on screen. So be sure to check those out and mark them down your calendar, including the season finale and the campaign finale of all of 2020 for the Hero Cup Series later on this evening. Be sure to tune in at approximately 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time. But until then, and until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.